Hey folks, Würfel here, and today we're gonna take a look at my new dice tower. So this is the Resin Tornado. It's basically made of two major components, the center resin cast and the outer plexiglas tubing. In the backside, it's held together by a plastic washer and a screw. Before we jump into this, I want to show you how I started with that project. As most of the time, it started with a 3D print. From that, I made a mold, made some first casts, and we landed on this part. This here is one of the first towers that I made, and this already shows one of the main intentions that I had with this tower, and that was to reduce some waste. So I have all the sprues and all the mishaps and all the stuff that didn't work, everything that I cast in resin. I didn't throw away anything except for the tiny bits that were left in the mixing cups. And I ever so wanted to use these bits to chuck them up and put them in some resin and cast new stuff. But chunking them down is quite difficult, so I decided I need something that is big enough to get the parts in without me needing to chuck them down. And you can see here the bottom section is quite thick, and all the green here is from such pieces. So this is simply a clear resin, and I threw in some stuff. You see some of the smaller bits even made it up till the top here, and I threw that stuff in so I can recycle it. And there's also a big benefit. Let me show you why. Here we have the cast in its raw state, so nothing has been done to it. You can see here at the bottom we have the bits that I threw in, and you can also see the bottom section here is quite thick. And if you have such a big amount of resin, during the curing this heats up, and this can overreact. A little bit of heat is quite good and speeds up the curing process. A bit more of heat starts to deform the material, and a lot of heat, maybe the stuff starts to boil and becomes quite dangerous to work with. So you should avoid such big things, or you need a special casting resin that is made for such big casts. In my case, I just wanted to use my regular material, and by throwing in the old sprue parts, this spreads the material apart and there's no heat concentration at the bottom. I can cast with my regular casting resins without overheating the parts. From that on, with this mold here, I decided I need some more practice because it's quite a complicated model. It's quite difficult to make these, especially the demolding process takes some time and practice. And I thought, this is a large amount of resin, and just for playing around a little bit, it's quite expensive to go with that. So I searched on Instagram for some volunteers that will buy a prototype version of this, and I made a special run and made 10 prototypes to test around. This is one of them. This is also a new pigment that I have. It's a metallic bubblegum colored material. I quite like it. I think with a polished version this would look awesome. I also played around with glitters and made a glitter bomb here. I played around with some transparent and opaque materials and I got these nice swirls. I played around with color gradients, so we have an orange here at the top, down to a deep red at the bottom. And of course, I noticed some issues here and there and what I need to take care of during the casting process. And I'm very thankful that I found these 10 people to help me on that project and bring me along, because we already have some issues. So let's have a look where we started. As always, it started with a 3D print. I showed you this one. And from that on, I decided to take my volunteers in and improve on that. So I made another 3D print. And I used some filler primer and sanding and filler primer and sanding, and at the end some clear coat to create this version. The surface is much smoother now. There are no print lines, but the clear coat is also not perfect. From that I created a mold. This mold here, yep, that's one big giant mold. I use these 3D printed shell parts to cast the mold and also to support the mold in the later usage. You can see here's the mold. This is one rigid, solid chunk. There's nothing special here, no cuts, no extra parts put in. And in the end, you unscrew the dice tower from the mold, which is quite tricky, but it works. And from that mold, I created the first master, which is this one. It didn't look that nice in the beginning, so I casted it just in clear material, and you can see a little bit of the chunks that I threw in here at the bottom. And then I sanded the whole thing up to 800 or maybe about 1000 grit. And I have a quite nice even surface finish on them. And from that I made the mold for the test run. So at this point I already made 3 molds. I made several test casts. I cut some plexiglas tubing. So that was already quite time consuming, material consuming, and I'm very thankful for those folks to jump in and help me out because I learned a lot. So from here on, I have this final version for the moment, and there are several problems. First of all, you have noticed this washer piece here and this screw. The first intention was to have some sort of gasket rubber band thing here at the bottom and just friction fit the glass tube on top of it, but the core is quite heavy and it slips out fairly easy, and I don't want to over stress the material here. Also, I noticed that there are quite a large variety of tolerances on plexiglass tubing. On my first prototypes, you can see here at the part with the screw, there's no washer because this fits perfectly inside the tube. This is the dimension I made it to. And on the next try, I even thought, you can see here maybe some of the scratches here, that I might need to reduce the diameter even a little bit. So on this master, I just sanded it down a little bit to have a little bit more air between the tower core and the tube. And then I got the next batch of plexiglass tubing, and the diameter is a little bit bigger. Let me show you here. Yeah, that's quite a lot of slop. Let me try to show you. I hope you can see here how big that gap is. I'm not sure, but it is about 2 to 3 millimeters thick, and that's a lot. I think part of it is shrinkage of the mold, so I think there's a little bit that I need to consider about shrinking of the material. Then I made the diameter of the base shape a little bit smaller, and then the plexiglass tubing is a little bit bigger, and this all sums up to quite a lot of a gap, and I don't want that. And if I just have a single screw here in the back, then I have a pivot point and it still can wobble around. With this long washer, I have a long area of contact, and this prevents the wobble, but it's not very nice. So this is something I want to avoid for the finished product. Another point is, you can see this surface. I personally think it doesn't look that bad. It's quite interesting due to some of the bits poking out of the surface. But when you need to make a nice flat standing tower, you need to sand it down, and then it becomes quite ugly. Also, it's a lot of work to sand that stuff down and flat. If you just sand it quickly down, then you most of the time have a little bit of a bend or bow in it, and the tower will not stand securely. So I will cut off the bottom at all. The complete core will be set on the inside of the plexiglas tube, and maybe I change the laser line cutting here and add a little bit of an extension here in 3 points, so I have little feet where the tower can stand on. So even on an uneven surface, the dice tower will stand because it has 3 points to connect. And I also want to improve the screw part, so instead of just one screw, I will add 3 screws around the perimeter, and I want to add a little bit of extra material underneath it. So the tower will receive a little bit of a pad that is coming outwards the surface, where the location for the screw is already marked in. And then I can drill and tap the screw here, and the surface around it is a little bit proud. And I can grind it down a little bit just to perfectly fit whatever size of tube I receive. In the worst case, I just sand it down to the core diameter. And if I have larger tube like that, I have at least 3 contact points. And with 3 contact points, there shouldn't be any issues with it wobbling around. Because I think if the core is hanging in the plexi tube and you only have that 1 point here in the back, that's quite a lot of load for 1 point. So with 3 points, I think it will even out the stress level. And I will definitely change a little bit the appearance of the laser cut here. Maybe I go away from the straight lines and try something wavy or so. I'm not sure yet, but I will play around a little bit. And I will also mark directly the locations for the holes and will not drill them by hand. So yeah, that's quite a lot of stuff that I need to play around with and experiment with. I also want to improve the surface, so I have some tests running and have a 3D print in ASA that I'm vapor smoothing at the moment. And hopefully this will leave a nice, even and glossy finish, so I can make some nice, glossy, transparent dice towers. Now I have a lot of stuff to do, and while I'm doing this, I hope you enjoy this little video here, and I would love to hear what you think we could do on these dice towers, what I should test and play around with. So far, we have glitters and transparent opaque swirls, color gradients, neon colors, and of course playing with the bits and pieces that I threw in. So there's a lot of opportunity what you can do. I already tested some LEDs here, but that tower's already given away to my brother. And I think there's even more stuff you can do. One thing will be cocktails. So I think of making cocktail versions like a mojito with some sugar-like stuff at the bottom and some ice cube-like things in it. So maybe I will add a little straw at the top of the plexiglas tube here. But overall, I think there are way more things that I could try and do here, maybe a Sharknado version or whatever. I would love to hear from you what you think we should try on these towers. And when I have some updates and more stuff, I will come up with another video. And until that, I wish you a lot of fun. Play around. Happy tinkering, happy crafting, and happy dice making. Until the next time, bye.